Good evening. It is August 6th, 2026. It's in the evening. I am here in the kitchen, and we're going to do a slightly different chore today. We are going to make some blackberry jam. Um, Last weekend, we went and picked some of the blackberries that are on right now. They'll probably be on for another couple of weeks, and gathered a couple of about a gallon and a half. And now we're going to turn the fruits of our labor into delicious jam. So we do this with a method called hot bath canning. Um, there are other ways of doing jam. The easiest way to do jam is freezer jam, and some people like the taste of freezer jam better. The only downside to freezer jam is it needs to be in the freezer. Or in the refrigerator. Well, it needs to be in the freezer until you're using it. But this is a traditional canning method that will preserve the fruit and the jam for ostensibly as long as it will go before the seal fails. Canning companies, with which there is one now. If you've done any canning, you've probably run into like Ball jars and Mason jars and all those, but they've all been consolidated into one mega corporation now. Kerr is the other one you see often. So they're all owned by a single company. There are some Chinese companies that are producing other jars, but I experimented around with some of that stuff during COVID, and I was not impressed. My recommendation would be to stick with the main things: Kerr, Ball, or Mason jars. Those are the ones that I know work. Okay, so I got kind of a pre-game going here. So we have our hot bath pot, which is, I don't know how many gallons this is, probably 4 gallons. This one's kind of like a tin pot. It's not like a real solid thing, but it does exactly what I need it to do. So when we get the jam into the jars, they're going to go into the hot bath for the final stage, and we'll talk about that more in a second. I've also got a cast iron Dutch oven, just a regular pot here that we use to cook all the time. And I have taken 9 cups of blackberries, and I put them in. Now I'm following the recipe that is contained in the Ball Blue Book. If you go to any grocery store, generally, or any kind of supply store that sells canning supplies, they will generally have a copy of this book. It goes for about $10, and I actually do not. I'm looking at an older edition. I know there's a newer one. I think I bought it last year. So when it comes to canning, there's a lot of bad information on the internet, we'll say, and some of it is passed down from grandma or great grandma, and there's been some problems, and a lot of that has to do with the nature of our food supply. We haven't talked about this very much, but especially over the 20th century, corporations have greatly altered the food that we eat. And one of the things that they've done is they've bred things to be less acidic. And I don't know if they've done that specifically. My understanding is with tomatoes, it was done to quote unquote enhance the flavor. And the American palate has kind of shrunk in terms of the flavor variety and elements such as taste like bitter or hot, like peppery hot. And a lot of Americans are just not tolerant. They've eaten too many like chicken nuggets and like tortillas, and they kind of like a vanilla flavor. But usually the genetic modifications come more towards disease resistance and the ability to pack and ship food. So our food supply comes from all around the world. So it's important that they can pick at the right time, ship it in the parameters that they can move food around on container trucks, get it into food store, into the storage distribution centers, put it in the trucks, get it to your grocery store endpoint, and have it still be palatable enough that you're going to buy it. Now, oftentimes, there's the tale of the red delicious apple. If you're know anything about apples, Red Delicious is probably the worst tasting apple there is out there. It's mealy, it's got a really thick skin, but it's sort of kind of gorgeous and iconically what an apple is. And when I was a kid, you go to the grocery store, that was the main variety of apples they would sell, Red Delicious. And now you see a lot of Gala and Gala-based ones, like Jazz and stuff like that. Usually it's because some of them are under copyright. So like Jazz, I know is one. Gala is not. But when you're looking at different varieties like Pink Lady or whatever, they're oftentimes pushed that way because somebody owns the copyright on it and they make more money. But I digress. So whenever you're doing canning, you want to follow the recipe exactly. They say cooking is an art and baking is a science, and preserving food is even more of a science. There's chemistry that's happening and specific things that have to happen so you don't get sick and or die. The threat in canning is botulism. And the problem with botulism is you can't see it, smell it, or detect it with your naked senses, and it can kill you. That's the bad news. So you want to take this stuff seriously. The good news is it's actually pretty rare for people to get botulism. You're more likely just to get sick, or even more likely your food gets contaminated and you'll notice when you pull it out. So the odds that it gets all the way through and you eat some botulism infected thing is very low, and it's pretty much close to zero if you follow the rules precisely. So you can get those. I would only recommend, and this isn't just me, this is the authorities out there. You either use the Ball Blue Book and use the recipes in there, because they test these recipes in test kitchens. So these recipes have all been vetted and they are all scientifically proven to actually preserve the food. The other place you could get recipes is from an extension service, from a .edu extension, a university extension service. So there's a few universities around the country that do a lot with food preservation and canning and that sort of stuff. And if you get the recipe from one of their sites, it's good to go. So that's good enough. Okay, so what I've done to pregame here, I have my sink full of hot soapy water, and I put my jars down here. So we're going to be doing half pints or cups, which is what normally jam is canned into. And this recipe will deliver 6 to 7 pints. So I've got them in the water. They're just kind of sitting there. When I'm done with my jars, after we've used things, I take them back down to the storeroom where they live. But we always clean them again, in part to sanitize them. So that's why you want to use as hot of water as you can, hot soapy water, get it clean and sanitized. I'm opening a pack of lids. So I'm going to take 7, that's about what we're going to get. And I got a little lid holder thing that you can get at any canning supply. And I'm going to dip those lids down in the water, and they're going to sit here for a while until they're done. This does a couple things. One, you want the seal, the ring on the jar lid, you want it to be a little bit damp. You don't want it to completely dry. It's less likely to make a good seal. And you also want to sanitize it and all that kind of stuff. It came from the factory and boxed in. And while it's unlikely there's any kind of weird pathogen there, you just never can be too safe. Okay, so I've got my jars and my lids now in the hot water. I've got my big water bath pot that is on, and we are heating it up. Now, it's going to be a little while before these are ready to go. So what I'll probably do is get it up to what the temperature you're supposed to get up to is about 180 degrees and leave it there. The reason 180 degrees is you risk temperature shock with the glass bottles. If you put a cold bottle into really hot water, or vice versa, you take a really hot jar and bring it out into like a cold room, you risk cracking the glass from temperature shock. So what we're going to do is via the instructions, we're going to try to keep the operational temperature around 180 degrees. It's pragmatically really hard to do that for reasons we'll explain as we get here. But if you're close enough, again, this isn't a big deal. Now, I've been canning long enough for years. I've had many jars break on me. It usually happens in the bath or when you're pulling it out of the bath. The jars just become fatigued over the years, and you don't always know because people know that we can. We've been given lots of jars, and sometimes they're in various conditions. They might have been grandma's jars that get passed on and that sort of stuff. You want to inspect every jar, especially you want to close your eyes and run your finger all over the rim because any kind of damage to the rim, which is where it's most likely to happen, somebody's tapping a knife on there, they're doing something like that, and they can put little chips that you might not even be able to see with the naked eye that could compromise the seal, and then you don't have your food preserved. Okay, so I've got my berries. This recipe called for 9 cups of crushed berries. And the thing is, you're just trying to get the airspace out. Now, I'll give you one of my complaints about canning recipes is they are completely inconsistent about how they measure food. Some of these recipes will ask for it in pounds. Some of them will ask for it in cups. Some of it will ask for it in ounces. And of course, in the American system, we have the problem. The ounce can either be a volume measure or a weight measure. And sometimes it's just not clear. So you got to do your best to kind of suss it out and guess from context. But I'm using the general berry recipe that is in my ball recipe book here. And so what it calls for is 9 cups berry jam, 9 cups crushed berries. So I took the berries, I put them in a big 4-cup glass measuring cup, and I used a big muddler. I have a muddler I use that's about, I don't know, 9 inches and about 2 inches in diameter, and I use it when I'm making sauerkraut. When you make sauerkraut, you got to muddle the hell out of that stuff, and so I have a couple of these muddlers. I didn't really go crazy. I just wanted to get all the air pockets out of the jam before I dropped it in. Just cooking it is going to break down the structure of the fruit, and that's going to do well enough for us. So I put my nine cups, and then the only other thing in here is 6 cups of sugar. Now, jam has a lot of sugar in it. Now you can make jam. It's possible with honey, but I don't know how to do it, and so I just use white granulated sugar, the way Grandma used to do it. You can reduce the amount of sugar, but you should probably get a recipe that does so because the sugar is actually involved in preservation. Sugar does actually aid in the preservation of food. Things like salt and vinegar and sugar aid in the preservation of food. Here we are not doing any kind of ferment. We're not doing any kind of structural change that way. We're just going for the jam point, and we'll get to that more in a second here. So my fruit here is boiling, so it's bubbling. So I just come about every 30 seconds here, and I'm just stirring it down, making sure I get it off the edge. One of the things you want to watch for is hot spots. That's when I use a cast iron Dutch oven, because otherwise your burner can get a really hot spot, and then you burn the fruit down there. That fruit burn gets throughout the whole thing, and then you have burned jam, and nobody wants burned jam. Okay, so I'm looking for a cup, a measuring cup. And I got my white granulated sugar here. And there we go, cup 1. Now I usually put that in and kind of stir it in a little bit. And cup 6. Now, before I came to the Pacific Northwest, and these blackberries, these are Himalayan blackberries, which are an invasive species here, and the place is covered in them. You can harvest them roadside, but before you do so, I would be careful because many of the cities and counties spray them with basically to kill them. And so there's chemical residue. So be careful where you gather your berries because you don't want to be accidentally ingesting whatever nasty stuff the county is spraying around. You'll see signs out through our county, and I've seen it around in other places where they'll say no spray, where the homeowners are basically telling the county not to spray for blackberries. The blackberries are really super tenacious. They will, if all the humans died right now, then these blackberries would just take over the entire area. So just having a property here, I spend a great deal of time every year fighting against these blackberries, but they do produce a delicious fruit. Okay, so I've got the sugar kind of mixed in there. I'm not feeling any lumps of sugar. It knocked down my boil a little bit. So I don't have a big raging boil because we're trying to get transformation that I'm going to talk about here in a second. Okay, so we got the sugar in there. Anyway, I think I started saying that before I moved to the Pacific Northwest, I always thought blackberries were tart because of the issues I was talking about with food again. Berries, they're going to be shipped to your store in the little plastic clamshell. First of all, that's more plastic and a higher end of plastic that has to be done to keep the berries from being crushed. But they also have to pick the berries a little bit early because if they pick them right when they're ripe. If you go out to a blackberry tree and get a perfectly ripe blackberry, they are amazing. They taste like creme brulee is the best way I can say it. They're just all sweet and smooth, and there's not an element of tartness. Now with jam, the tartness is okay. Having tart to balance out that sugar gives it a nice flavor. In fact, when you see recipes for like blueberry jam, or when they're using blueberries, they oftentimes will add a bit of lemon juice, a bit of acid to kind of round out that taste. But for these berries, these are acidic enough. Now we're talking about the chemistry of the preservation. This works because there's a couple of vital ingredients. One, the blackberries have enough acid in them to aid in the preservation. If you have low acid foods, you cannot do a hot bath canning. You have to then do a pressure. You have to pressure cook those bottles. But blackberries have enough acid that we are good. We can do the hot bath, the warm bath canning. So we have to have the sugar in there. That's an element. We have to have the acid. And then to get jam to have that perfect jamminess, you have to have pectin. Now, pectin is a naturally occurring substance that when cooked will create that sort of bind, much like, say, cornstarch or flour can do when you're creating a roux. It binds the whole thing together and gives it that perfect consistency. Now, when you're heating sugar up, and if you get a candy thermometer, let me see if my candy thermometer has this on here. There is a meat thermometer. All right, here's my thermometer. So this is a candy thermometer I got at grocery store, and I'm looking. So it has the temperature of at 220 that you thread, and then 240 goes to a firm ball, then a hard ball, then a soft crack, and a hard crack. So what will happen is when you heat this mixture up, it's going to achieve the boiling temperature of water, 212 at sea level. So I'm about 300 feet above sea level, so I can use sea level calculations. Where I lived before, when I grew up in Utah in the Salt Lake Valley, we were above 4,000 feet. So I had to kind of redo my canning, but it was nice because at altitude, you always have to modify the recipes. Now, the book tells you exactly how to modify the recipes. So there is a precise way to do it based on altitude. And oftentimes, it's just a matter of increasing the time that it's in the hot bath. But if you're at sea level or near sea level, you can basically follow the default recipes. So we have to heat this up to 212, and then it will reach the jamming point, which I believe is around 215 degrees or so. And what you'll see if you put the thermometer in is that the temperature will rise, and then it'll stall, and it'll sit there for a while. And then it will start to rise again. And if you go too far, you keep it going after it meets the jam point, it will start to turn more like a syrup, and it'll get thicker and thicker, and then it will start to candy. So if you kept cooking it all the way up the recipe, you would get hard candy, crack candy, like peanut brittle, or like that's in like a sucker. And then as you back away from that, you get things like the caramels, where you have that gooey consistency. It's all a matter of how long you cook that sugar. And I am not a candy maker. That is way outside my realm of expertise. But I have done both mistakes, where I undercook the fruit and where I overcook the fruit. And if you overcook it, it gets thick and harder to spoon out of the jar. Still edible. It's still usable. So if you make a batch like that, and if you don't cook it long enough, then it'll be sort of liquidy. Again, we've done all of those, especially if I've had people who haven't been canning for a long time. Canning is like all things. It's an art. It takes practice. And if you're the type that does it once and it doesn't come out perfect, and you're not going to be happy with that, and you're going to cry and say, well, I guess I can't do that. Well, you're a baby. Because just like everything else, you got to keep at it. So if you're planning on giving away jam, I would suggest that you cook it, let it sit for 24, 48 hours, open a jar, make sure it's the right consistency before you give it away, because you don't want to be that, you got to have the pride of the PTA bake sale circa 1960. Okay, so this process now of getting this to a jamming point, it takes a while. You're just going to cook and check and cook and check and cook and check. Now I've got this thermometer sitting right here, which I can also use to get it up to that right jamming temperature. Now I'm gonna get my phone right here, and I'm actually gonna look up and see what jamming temperature is. Okay, temperature for jam. Temperature for jam setting point. I'm asking my trusty DuckDuckGo browser here. The setting point for jam is typically around 220. This is the temperature ensures that the jam thickens properly and achieves the desired consistency. Okay, so there's a couple other methods when you're doing this. So you'll get it to 212 where it's sitting right now, and you'll cook it and cook it and cook it and wait for that temperature to rise. Somebody had written in the book, it's not in my handwriting, 215-ish. But there's two types of tests you can do. The first is a spoon drop, where you put a spoon in it and you just lift it up, and it will start like oozing off, kind of like maybe like an egg white, where it's kind of sticking together and kind of glooping, kind of a snotty sort of, the spam gelatinous substance level. But I wouldn't advise doing that on your first one, because you got to get a feel for what it's like, because when you shut the heat off, it's not going to be quite where it's going to be after it goes into the water. The second method is to take a cold spoon, and I'm going to do this right now because I'm telling you, I'm going to put 3. So I'm going to get a teaspoon right here out of the drawer. There's 3 of them. I'm going to put them in the freezer. So what this is going to do for us is when I think the jam's ready, I'm going to take it onto that cold spoon, and then it should set fairly immediately, because that temperature will bring it down into the set point. But again, this is the challenging point. Now, again, you can watch the temperature. So on my scale where it says thread starts 220, I'm not real super familiar with candy making terms, so I'm sure somebody's out there yelling at me right now. But so we want to get to about 220. Now I could set my thermometer right in there. This one has a nice little bracket. It's case hardened. It is good to go. But you need to be careful, because there's a lot of little crevices down there. And I put that there. I'm no longer stirring it with my trusty wooden spoon here, so I can get that burned fruit. So I'm not gonna put this in now, because I know I'm not there. It's got to start thickening up before I'm there. Okay, so I'm looking over here. My hot bath is boiling, so I'm going to take it down to a low temperature. I've got the lid on. I just want to preserve it hot because when we're ready to move, we want to move quickly. Now, I realize as I'm explaining this to you, this probably sounds a lot more onerous than it is. All the steps are pretty straightforward. They're pretty easy. The first couple times you do it, it's scary because you don't have an intuitive instinct for when to move things. But you know what? I love this stuff, man. This is what's really interesting because this is chemistry. This is amazing. The fact that I can take fruit that's going to rot in just a couple days. If I left it outside in the heat right now, it would be rotten in 24, 48 hours. But here I can put it and I can put it down in my basement and I can keep it for potentially years. I visited my folks a couple weeks ago and I saw my dad was eating a jar of jam that was dated 2016. So that's 10 years old. I wouldn't advise it. The companies, or the company that produces these lids, I'm looking at my box here, the ball regular mouth lids, guarantees them for 1 year. And from a efficiency and a homesteading perspective, that's really what you want to do. So here we are at the 1st of August. What I should do is mark on my calendar, August 1st, I had my first harvest of blackberries so that I can plan next year, okay, around about the first week in August, I need to set aside some time to make my blackberry jam. And then what I want to do is I want to can exactly the amount that I am going to eat between now and August 1st of next year. So if you're doing it right for maximum cost savings, maximum efficiency, you're making the food that you eat and you're eating the food that you make. I've said many times, and I will continue to talk about this and harp on this point, one of the hardest things in all of this sort of permaculture or homestead kind of food stuff is that it's hard to eat it correctly because I've got these blackberries and they're on the bush right now. I could go out and collect some, and I should be. I should be putting them in my yogurt. I should be putting them in my smoothies. I should be eating them as a dessert. I should be doing everything I can to eat as many as I can when they're fresh. And then what I need to do is I need to alter to eating jam. Now, one of the things I like to do is collect old cookbooks because I like doing all the things. And it's fascinating between, let's say, 1930 and 1990, let's draw that point, 60 years, just how much everything changed of the way Americans eat food and the way we go about things. And part of that is losing track of a lot of things we used to do. So if you get old cookbooks, there will be recipes that use jam because that was one of the ways you preserved fruit. And the idea of going to the grocery store in January and picking up some berries, that was just not a thing. In fact, I won't do it now. I don't like them. So I'm already living there because I've become a snob, and I don't like eating berries out of season. They're not very good to me. So some things you can do with jam, you go buy yogurt, but yogurt can be made as a home thing. I've done it before. I don't do it regularly. My daughter's doing it right now. And fresh made yogurt is delightful. But if you put just jam in the yogurt, it's going to be much better and much better for you than if you buy the yogurt at the grocery store that has fruit in it. Just flip it over and read all the ingredients. What is that stuff? What are you eating? This thing I'm making is made of blackberries and sugar, and that's it. So I know exactly what's in it, and I roughly know how much sugar is in it. Basically, you think about it, a teaspoon of jam is basically a teaspoon of sugar. So you can kind of roughly calculate it out and say it's about the same calories as just putting sugar, and use it accordingly. But making tarts or other baked goods that have jam in it, you'll see in old cookbooks a lot of meat marinades and other things, especially if you go back enough in time, like before this, let's say, I don't know, before the 18th century. Middle Ages, a lot of the cooking involved mixing meat in sweet things. You know, that's where you get like minced meat pie, which of course, if you get a minced meat pie now, there's no meat in it. There'll just be nuts and fruit. But the original recipes did have meat, and that's oftentimes how they ate it. So their palate was tuned into eating fruit and meat together. Okay, so I mentioned very briefly that, so this is starting to thicken up a little bit. So I am about to put my thermometer in and see where we're at. I mentioned pectin. So if you're making jam with fruit that doesn't have enough pectin, you can add it. It's one of those things you buy in the market section. You can also cheat. So let's say I was doing this and I was getting really frustrated that it just wasn't setting. I could go ahead and add pectin in here. It's not going to hurt anything. But you know, again, if you're dealing with berries that have pectin in it and you're adding pectin and you don't really know what you're doing, you could kind of get into creating a weird gloppy slurry really quickly. So I'm watching the temperature climb. It looks like it shows right now we're about at boiling point. So if I keep my eye on that, let me get a plate so I don't get berry juice all over the counter here. All right, so while I'm doing this, mostly when I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm just stirring and watching and feeling the resistance of this jam. I'm feeling for it to change. So, you know, if you asked me, if I went into class and they gave me a quiz, like, what is the resistance point of jam? I don't know, but I can feel it when it starts to alter. So I'm going to take my handy dandy thermometer out of there. And what I'm going to do now is I've cleared off a place of my countertop, and I'm going to put down a towel, a tea towel, because this is a wet job. And we're going to move here shortly our bottles over here. Now, the reason I'm leaving them in the water and not cleaning and moving them over here right now is they're going to start cooling the minute I put them over here. If I get them too cold, I risk cracking the jar when I'm putting the hot material from the jam. I don't think I've ever cracked one doing this, but and sometimes you'll wash a batch and then they'll sit there for the next time. Again, I don't think I've ever cracked one, but it is a possibility, and I don't want you to get hurt. Luckily, when these bottles crack, they don't shatter. At least I've never seen them shatter, so there's not like fear from glass shards or whatever. All right, we're still going strong there. So we're talking about food production. Well, let me talk about the other things I have here. So I've got my wooden spoon, and here I have a plastic ladle that I got at a canning supply place. I like it because it has a little lip on it that I can put it on the side of my pot so I don't have to set it down in its own goo. And it is exactly, if you fill it all the way up, this is exactly 1 cup. But most importantly, because I'm left-handed, it has the dimples on either side. So you can pour stuff with your left hand, your right hand. Measuring cups are usually right-handed, which means if you have it in the wrong hand, you can't read them correctly, or the spout is in the wrong place. So that's just something to watch out for. So I have that, and I'm going to put that in the water. I just try to sanitize everything. The next thing I have is this little green, I just had it in my hand. It is often called a bubble popper, and it has a little sawtooth top that has marks to show you what the headspace is. Now, the headspace is between the top of the glass jar and your jam. It's how much space, and it's extremely important, and you need to look it up in the recipes. If you have the wrong headspace, you're going to have problems preserving stuff. I've seen some rules of thumb for using jars to kind of figure out your headspace. I would advise against it just because so many jars are so different. And then I have a funnel here that's has the size of a regular mouth jar. So that's going in here. And that will get us, oh, there it is. I knew I had it somewhere. So we've got our ladle, we've got our funnel, and we've got our bubble, our popper slash measuring tool. There's also these tongs looking things that are used to move the jars in and out of the hot water. Those are absolutely imperative. If there's any one tool you got to have, it's that, because you don't want to be reaching in there because this water is boiling hot. Okay, so we're still going strong. It still feels about the same, giving it a big stir. Trying to keep it from getting scorched on parts. I also am, if there's big pieces of fruit hanging around in there, I'll crush them on the side a little bit. You can have big pieces of fruit, and that's one of the differences between jelly, jam, and preserves. I don't know the exact difference between a preserve and a jam, but a jelly is made from juice. I do know that. So you don't get any fruity, pulpy stuff. And I like jam better because it has all that fiber and other goodness left over from the fruit. Okay, so we talked a little bit about food preservation, which is one of the big deals, and I think one of the things that makes this hard. That's one of the unsung things that's not talked about very much, is between August 1st, and we talked the other day about Lammas and how that was traditionally marked in the English culture to really be the time of the harvest. So from my homesteading calendar, right now I'm putting that thermometer back in. August, September, and October are the busy times. So you've got to be preserving and putting up food. Um, the bigger one for us is apples and pears, especially apples, because I already have tons of apples on the ground. Now, if I was really efficient or I was doing this full time, even today, I would probably put out tarps and I'd go out there every day and I'd sort the apples by the ones that fall that are still good, and the ones that fall that can be turned into cider or fed to the animals or whatever my sort is. And actually, a lot of the issues that you have in fruit, like blemishes and whatever, they really don't matter. They're cosmetic, and which is another kind of truism of homesteading or doing your own food, is most Americans don't know what food even supposed to look like. So they'll turn their nose up at actual stuff because they're used to stuff that is been grown and picked for its appearance and its color, and not necessarily for its taste or for what fruit naturally looks like. So it's really a sad thing that a lot of Americans don't even know what fresh produce should look like. It's like baby carrots. There's not, there's no stores around here that sell baby carrots. What they do is they take full-size carrots and then they send them through a lathe. And then they take that carrot slurry and they use it in other things. They might use it in dog food, or they might use it in, who knows, anything you eat. But people are buying baby carrots, but they're not really. I think our ancestors would think we're nuts that we take a perfectly good vegetable that looks like it's supposed to look. It looks like a carrot, and then we take it and run it through machines and shave it off and call it a baby carrot, because you can have baby carrots, but that's not them. That's not what baby carrots look like. And we just don't even know. We've just been so fooled by the mediocrity of the whole thing that we don't even know, or we don't know how to encounter what actual real food looks like. Okay, I'm gonna rinse off my tools here. Just getting the soap off these things. So when things move, we want them to move quick here. Just because, like a lot of things, the faster you go, the better, the easier it's going to be. All right, so there, that all rinsed off, and I'm going to leave my lids and my jars in there. Okay, we'll go give it another stir. Oh, it looks like we are moving up on the thermometer. Well, maybe not. 200. This is hard because I really need glasses. We're about at boiling right now. I think we were actually a little bit below that before. We were at like 204 or something. Okay, I'm starting to feel it thicken up a little bit, but I'm taking my spoon and I am just letting it drip off, and it's just running off. So it's not started to jam up at all. All right, we'll keep going. And if I run out of things to talk about, we're going to hit the pause button, and then I will come back online. But I think for right now, we're still good. Okay, so starting the canning, I actually did a round of canning. I hadn't done any in 3 or 4 months. There's some canning I like to do in the winter. Matter of fact, I like to do as much canning as I can in the winter because it does heat up the kitchen. I will be perfectly honest with you guys, not to thirst trap you, but I'm standing here in my underwear right now. I'm not wearing much of anything because this can get hot, and it is a hot day outside. We do not have air conditioning, but it's probably 75 degrees in here. It's not like it's not bad, but I'm standing right in front of a boiling pot, so it can raise the temperature in the kitchen. All right. This was a new spoon I just bought a couple weeks ago, and now it's going to be stained purple, which makes me happy. Okay, so we have our ladle, and we have our funnel, and we have our measuring tool. So I'm looking at the recipe. Ladle hot jam into a hot jar, leaving 1/4 inch headspace. Remove air bubbles. Clean, yeah. And then what I'm looking for is the process time. Lower the rack, cover the jars by 1 inch, 15 minutes. Okay. So the preservation process is we start with this jam that's cooking. So as I'm boiling this right now, I'm killing anything that's in there in terms of molds or yeah, I mean they're going to be covered in everything out there. It's covered is covered in a little bit of mold, which we oftentimes use in preservation process. So there's pollen and dust and mold and just the things that are part of the regular world. So this isn't going to kill anything that's on the fruit, just this first boil. So then we're going to put it in the jar, and then we're going to tighten that lid on there. And we're only going to have a 1/4 inch headspace. So there's not very much air in there. Now, you'll get a bigger headspace when there's certain things that boil, like if you're making vegetable stock. I was telling you, this isn't the first thing I canned. I made some vegetable stock just a couple weeks ago. I'll come back to that in a second. But we want to create a vacuum as much as we can. And so part of this process, especially after they go into the hot bath, it's going to be cooking it some more, and it's going to sterilize everything some more. But it's also going to basically create a vacuum that causes that jar lid to pull in. And that's what you can check. We'll check the lids tomorrow morning, and they should not, when you touch them, they shouldn't bounce. They should be pulled. It should suck as it dries out or as it cools off. It'll pull that down and create a vacuum that prevents the oxygen. Most of our, a lot of our problems in food comes from oxygenation. I didn't say that right, but so if we can remove the air, we remove the ability for things like molds and other nasties to grow. So that's another part of the preservation process, creating that vacuum in there, getting all of the air out, and preserving it. Now, old timers, we're talking more than 100 years ago, basically, and in a lot of places, okay, my temperature is going up a tiny bit, but we're still not at 220, and I don't think we're at jamming point yet. They would use wax. So what you would do is you would take your jam after you put it in the jar, and then you have the paraffin wax is what they usually use. I'm sure you could use beeswax; it would just be a lot more expensive. And you take that paraffin and then you pour it on top of the jam. And what that does is it creates an environment where there's no oxygen whatsoever in there. It is not as solid of a process, so it's something that I would probably do in an emergency if I didn't have access to the lids. But as long as I have access to the lids, that's what I will use to preserve them. Okay, so yeah, I made some vegetable stock. I've got several of these. We had a lot of extra vegetables, especially when you get a lot of onion tops and things like that. We did this when the garlic scapes came on. So when the garlics go through a growth cycle, and they send up this head that will become a seed head. But what you do is after it sends out the head, you cut them all off, and they're kind of like thicker than a scallion, but they're a quarter-inch in diameter, and they have a garlicky taste. They're green, they're fresh, they're wonderful. So there's about 2 weeks when you can use a lot of scapes. But we had lots of extra scapes. We planted a lot of garlic, so I use that to make stock, and we'll use that more in the winter than in the summer. So whenever you're doing a base for a roast, you put that vegetable stock in there, and bam, you've already got better flavor profile. Probably the next thing I will be canning right now, the sweet corn is on. After doing this for a few years, we've learned like what we like to eat, because sometimes you do this aspirationally. You think, oh, this is what I should be eating, and you can what you should be eating, but then you don't actually eat it. So that's that thing I keep referencing, that actually eating what you can and producing the right amount that you grow in the garden, then the right amount to preserve, and then the right amount to eat through the winter. But I think that's kind of step 17. When you first start growing things in the garden, the best thing to do is just eat it. Just eat it fresh. When I go out there and I see fresh food, like every time I'm out there, every time I'm talking to you, I guarantee I ate a tomato, because the cherry tomatoes are starting to come on. So if I see them, I'll eat them. If I see berries, I'll eat them, because there's nothing quite like eating right off the tree. Okay, we're getting closer to this point, and now I shouldn't say it because I haven't done editing yet, but I haven't left any gaps in here. You're kind of seeing how long this thing takes. Probably did about 15 minutes of setup before I brought you guys on. All right, so it's boiling pretty good. I'm actually turning the temperature down a tiny bit just because I don't want to scald it on the bottom. All right, so it's all engines forward. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause you for a minute, and I'm going to let this get up to heating. I'm looking at the time. I'll tell you exactly how long you're paused, but I will see you in just a second. Okay, I'm back. It has been 8 minutes since I spoke to you last. Now, a couple of things I need to point out, and I always make some mistake. No matter what I'm doing, I always make a mistake. And I'll tell you the mistake I made today is my candy thermometer here, my cooking thermometer, which is a great one. It is designed so that you can take the mercury-filled glass cylinder and you can adjust it. And I was kind of contemplating that somebody wrote in my book that the temperature is 215, which isn't right. But I'm sure what's happened is this thermometer is not set to the right point. And so it was giving the wrong temperature. So you do need to recalibrate your thermometers, but you need to know what the boiling temperature of water is at your altitude. Okay, so it's starting to thicken up. It's been sitting by my thermometer. It's been sitting at 220 for a couple minutes, so we're probably at the right place. I just got one of my icy spoons out of the freezer, and I'm going to take some jam on this spoon, and I'm going to dish it onto this thing. I'm just going to move this out here and let it sit for just a second. So I'm just trying to cool that jam and see where the point is. One of the challenges here, especially this is the downside of using cast iron, is cast iron evenly distributes the heat, but it also retains heat. So even when I shut this thing off, it will still be cooking for a little while. And so I have to take that into account. Oh, it's good. Okay, we're almost there. While you were gone, I took my jars out. I rinsed them and I scrubbed them, particularly paying attention to the rim, and I have them sitting upside down on a towel right now just to drain all the water out. Water is not going to destroy things, but it's our enemy here. We want to boil out a lot of the water. Okay. Another thing I want to point out is there are manufacturers out there who are manufacturing goods in glass jars that are exactly the same size, have exactly the same lid profile as mason jars or Kerr jars or whatever. If the jar you have does not have an imprint in the glass that says either Ball, Kerr, or Mason, or another brand that you trust, if it's just nothing, do not use that jar to can. So if you buy jam or whatever at the grocery store, there's no guarantee that jar that glass jar is of structural integrity to be able to take the heat, and you'll probably end up having a cracked jar and you'll be disappointed. So remember always to only use good jars. And Kimmy and I like to go to thrift stores every so often. All right, I've taken that. Let me look. Uh, a lot of things I use, I've gotten there. If we can get a used version, it's good enough. But you'll see those places selling jars. Now, the current going price for jars, mason jars in the grocery store is about $1 a jar. You'll get a pack of, I don't know how many are in, 12, and it's oftentimes like $12 or $15. So a dollar plus change. Secondhand stores tend to sell them for $2 each or $1.50 each. So why they do that, I don't know. Why they sell jars for more than they're worth brand new. But I've kind of hinting this before. It's best just to buy the jars that you're going to use directly from the store. So your first batch, it'll cost you $1 per jar. But I have jars that are probably 60 or 70 years old that have been used 20, 30, 40, 50 times, and they're still going strong. So it's an investment, but when it's kind of a truism when you first start getting into this stuff, the it's not going to be worth it cost wise in the beginning, because you've got to get your pot, you've got to get the rack that goes in the bottom of the pot, you got to get all these things. But if you look at it like you would any other hobby that you do, you're not necessarily looking for break even. Oh, I feel that getting nice and sludgy down at the bottom. Okay, so we are getting there. I'm going to take this thermometer out and I am going to rinse it off right now before that sugar dries on there and makes it hard to clean. This is, if you knew me, this would be a weird thing coming from, I'm not always the tidiest person in the world, but this is one of the things where cleaning as you go is going to make you happy. As a matter of fact, before I started with you, I made sure that the dishwasher was cleared out and ready to take new dirty dishes, so I can just get things right into the dishwasher. All right, I had my hot bath going, fired up a little while ago. I'm turning the heat back on. Again, I don't want to put things in there boiling. We're looking for about 180 degrees in there, but that's not something I measure. Another rule of thumb I've seen when it comes to jam making is when it has a boil that you can't stir down. So, normally as you're boiling something, you stir it and the boiling goes away. When it has enough energy in there that you can't stir down the boil, it's probably at the right point. But because it's sitting at like at 220 degrees, when it goes to the next stage, it will start shooting up in temperature, and then I've overshot it. But it's kind of hard to hit that point. I've had it more often where I just don't do it long enough is more likely. And then you just have runny jam and you're still happy. Okay. You're just not going to win the state fair. I'm going to call it there. So I'm going to take all that's going and I'm going to clean off. Got a good rinse. Okay, now remember here you're dealing with hot stuff. So normally I would use 2 towels for this. So I'm going to put a towel down. This is just to keep the mess from getting too messy. Right here next to the stove. And then I'm going to take and put that on the ground because this is hot material coming out of here. And I'm going to start ladling it into the jar. Want to get that good stuff down at the bottom there. Put that spoon right there on the side. Move that over. Now it's not at a 1/4-inch headspace quite just yet, but it will be when we're done. So second one. I'm going to finish filling these. I'm going to skip ahead in the recording. Okay, I've got these jars all filled up. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just using a paper towel that I just got wet, and I'm wiping off the rim. I don't want any sugar on that rim because I don't want anything to interfere with the seal that's going to be made. So we got to get that cleaned up. These are hot. All right, wiping off that rim. Usually when novices start doing stuff like that, and they have problems, it's because they're taking shortcuts on all these little prep stuff. I'm talking from my own personal experience. The longer I do this, the more I think all the little side steps are the most important thing. I wonder if I sat and contemplated that, if there's a truism for life there. All right, so those are cleared off. Now my jars are sitting in hot soapy water, or my lids, so what I need to do is rinse them first. Get the soap off there. They're rinsed. So I'm going to take these lids, I'm going to try to not touch bottoms as much as I can, and I am going to place them square center on these jars. The technology of these is called SureTight. So these jars say ball SureTight. But I'll tell you, during COVID, I bought some Chinese lids that had SureTight printed on them, and I had colossal failures from them. So would not recommend. All right, now I'm putting these rings. You just want to finger tighten the rings, but you do want to get them tight because that's what's going to hold that rubber or whatever the substance is right to the jar. So these jars are still pretty hot. They're so these hot bath pots. This one is a single decker. There are double decker ones, but you know, until you're an experienced canner and doing things in big batches, you don't really need it. So I'm taking the tongs and I'm lowering these into the water. I just turned the water all the way up. Now, when all said and done here, I'm trying to evenly space them. I think this thing will take 9 jars of this size, but I've only got 8. Maybe it'll take more. Maybe it'll take 11. I think it takes 7 of the big ones and 11 of the 7 quarts, 9 pints, and I think it'd do 11 of these little. Just trying to space them out as evenly as possible. Okay, so I don't have enough water in there. It should be covering them by 1 inch. So I'm gonna have to add a little bit more water in. Let me do that right now. I'm not gonna do it for these, but another pro tip that I've learned is sometimes, especially if you have scaly water, we have a lot of calcium in our water, you can add a splash of vinegar into your hot bath that will keep your pot from getting all scaled up. I'm not going to do that right now. So we're going to add enough water in that it covers them by 1 inch. Now I'm going to turn it back up to high. I'm going to put the lid on because it'll boil faster. Now what we're going to do is we are going to get the boiling point. We're going to get it to it's boiling. Then we're going to time it 15 minutes. We're going to turn it off, let it cool down a little bit, and then we're going to pull them out, put them on the counter, and let them sit. I think it actually recommends you let them sit for 24 hours, but they will sit on the counter until I actually haul them downstairs where we have a storeroom, which could be days or weeks. I have a saying that I say around here, I will get to it eventually. So eventually I will take this down. All right, what I'm doing right now, I'm waiting for this thing to boil, is I'm just scooping the remainder of the jam that's in this pot out. And I'm just going to put it in a little container and put it in the fridge. And I will eat it for the next couple days, and it will be delicious. Okay, so this has been canning jam with John. I hope you have learned something. If you've stuck through us through this whole hour, I commend you. And what I want you to know is this might feel intimidating. It's not that bad. It just takes practice. It just takes doing it over and over again. And you know, it's actually kind of hard to screw up. Like I say, if it comes out and it's more a syrup, well, you just put it in the fridge and use it as a syrup. Put it on your ice cream. If it gets all candied up, well, you just bake it into a scone or something. You know, it's not like you're destroying the thing. The biggest thing is get this sugar stuff cleared up right away. Okay, well, I hope you've learned something. I've been sharing with me on a Thursday night, and you can email me at John at johnlarson.org. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, everybody. Hey, good morning. This is John. It's actually the next day. It's August 7th. I just finished listening through the recording, and I'm going to let you know that I actually overshot my jam probably by about 5 minutes. So it's a little bit thicker than I would like it. So when I first said in the recording it's starting to thicken up, I probably should have turned it off right then. Nobody's perfect, and I don't want you to think that I am. So the jam is good, a little bit thick. We'll try to remember that for the next one. Thanks again.